Let's then look at the last question, where it asks you to identify the muscle layer in A, and then what does B lie between. So let's first get our bearings right in this image. So you can see that this is a sagittal section. It's a sagittal section of a female pelvis, because here you can see this is the symphysis pubis. This part here is the sacrum. And if we go from anterior to posterior, we can see this is the bladder and this is the urethra. Here we have the uterus and the vagina, and here this is the rectum. So we have the bladder with the urethra here, the uterus with the vagina in between, and then the rectum posteriorly. So having identified this, let's see what it asks for. So it asks you for what the muscle of the bladder is called, since it's pointing to A. And the second part of the question is this pouch that is present. You can see the space, which is a peritoneal pouch, and it's asking you what that lies between. So we can see this pouch here, this peritoneal pouch. So let's look at the choices. The first one says myometrium, which is wrong, because myometrium is the muscle of the uterus, whereas this is pointing to the bladder. And the second part of the statement, which is what does B lie between, it says posterior vaginal wall and cervix. What lies between the posterior vaginal wall and cervix is something known as the posterior fornix, and very often students make a mistake between the fornix and the pouch of peritoneum. And if you look here, this is the posterior fornix, which is lying between this posterior vaginal wall here and the cervix here. So I'll put that in a different color. So you can see that this area here is the posterior fornix, which is lying between this posterior vaginal wall and the cervix here. But the arrow is not pointing to that. The arrow is pointing outside the uterus. So if you were to see it, if this is the uterus and this is the vagina this way, and here is the rectum, and we have the peritoneum, it comes this way and it goes out this way. So this part is where the arrow is pointing, whereas the posterior fornix lies in this area here. So therefore, this second part is also not correct. Let's look at the second statement, which has detrusor. So yes, the muscle of the bladder is called the detrusor. But B, it says here, lies between the vagina and the urethra. Now this is the vagina and this is the urethra. But B is not lying between those two. So this is wrong. So hence this entire statement is wrong. The third says perimetrium. Perimetrium is the outer layer of the uterus, this outermost connective tissue layer of the uterus. The inner layer is called endometrium, the middle or muscle layer is called myometrium, and the outermost is called perimetrium. So the arrow is not pointing to the perimetrium, so this is wrong. And the second part of the statement is also wrong, because it's suggesting that this is lying between the rectum and sacrum, which means posterior to the rectum. Between the rectum and the sacrum means this area. But that's not where the arrow is lying. The arrow is anterior to the rectum. It's lying between the rectum and the uterus. So let's look at the last statement, which says the muscle layer is called detrusor, which is true. The muscle of the bladder is called detrusor. And the arrow is lying between the rectum and the uterus, because it is the pouch of Douglas, or also known as the recto-uterine pouch. So therefore, the answer to this question is this one.